Why am I holding this guitar? Well, keep watching, I'll explain. I'm Russ Rapp, and this is my YouTube channel about non-duality. So why am I holding this guitar? Other than I think it makes me look cool. Well, I'll get to that in a second. But first I just wanted to mention quick about a non-duality conference I found out about recently. It's called Nothing Conference. It's going to be September 19th and 20th, so later this year. It's virtual, so they're going to have all sorts of non-duality speakers on the conference, live question and answer interviews or live talks, pre-recorded talks, all sorts of things. I talked to one of the promoters and organizers of the event here recently named Emerson. Super cool dude, and so seems like it's going to be a fun thing. So I think they're going to try to have some seasoned speakers as well as some newbies like me. So I'm going to see if I can be a part of that. But if you haven't, or if you're interested in non-duality and you haven't heard about it, check out their website. It's called nothingcon.com. So nothing conference, nothingcon.com, and you can sign up to register to attend that weekend virtually and get to see all the stuff. And I think right now it's free to register. I think they're maybe going to charge down the road, so check that out. And so let's get into why I've got this acoustic guitar here for this video. I think during this whole coronavirus COVID-19 situation, I've been playing one song in particular by the Beatles called Blackbird. So I think it's off the White Album. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. But it's a really, I think I started listening to it right before we went into this whole situation and really connected with it. But you know, I've been practicing it a lot and kind of used some YouTube videos to kind of learn some of the chords and stuff like that. And what I wanted to do was record myself playing and singing and put it on my YouTube channel. But doing some research, I think there's some copyright issues and whatnot. I know people do covers all the time of songs, but you know, I don't really want to go down that route at this point. And at the end of the video, I'll kind of explain why. So other than maybe a little of that, I'll have to figure out another way to get that out there. But it's just kind of for fun, something that I connect with. And you know, even from when I was a kid, I think crows, blackbirds were something I always related to. And I think partly because some of the mythology behind a crow or a blackbird and the idea of death. You know, you had a lot of things in the media when I was growing up, from movies like The Crow or Alfred Hitchcock's Birds. That's a good one. One of my favorite bands was Counting Crows growing up, and their album August and Everything After was something I think when I hit my teens I really connected with. And you know, it's very Counting Crows, Adam Duritz, he does a really good job of writing lyrics about kind of relationships, loneliness, kind of the sadness that goes along with feeling separate from others, and some of the things that I connect with. And actually, and I think it was middle school, I was going to try to dig it out of my closet. I wrote a little short story called Crow Story, because usually when I wrote stories and things like that for school, I would always say, you know, the title of my story would be cool title. And then later I would go and fix it and try to make something more interesting after I wrote a little bit. But it was called Crow Story, and I don't remember exactly how it ends, but basically it was a young person, kid or whatever, and his grandpa was in the hospital. I think he had cancer or something, and he was kind of on his deathbed, but he was in the ICU, and he ended up surviving at the time, but it didn't look like he was going to last very long. And the boy went home, and he was walking home after school, I think, and he saw a crow that flew down, and kind of like the idea of the raven. I'm also a big Edgar Allan Poe fan. But the raven or the crow was taunting this boy, and I can't remember what the ending was, so maybe I'll reveal that in another video. But it's always been something, the ideology or the imagery, the metaphor of a crow or a blackbird is something that I've always connected with. And so I wanted to perform that song, because I think, Blackbird, the kind of the feeling behind that song, I think is really really fits the situation right now with that everyone's kind of, hopefully we're getting out of, but everyone's having to deal with being a little bit disconnected from others in a physical sense. And it's kind of like Maya Angelou's "I Know Why a Caged Bird Sings," that kind of a thing. So unfortunately, you're not going to be able to listen to that song, because I don't want this video to be flagged and banned from YouTube for copyright infringement. But one of the things that I think is important when it comes to non-duality and how this kind of relates to non-duality is, I think it's good to perform, to emulate, to practice, to see what's come before and really find the essence of it and kind of make it your own. I think that's important. But I think what you want to avoid is, especially when it comes to non-duality, there's many different speakers out there talking about non-duality, and some can express it maybe a little bit better than others. But what can end up happening is you see these teachers, speakers, as a way to emulate, a way to kind of model your life after. And it's just like playing guitar. You look at the greats or someone that you really look up to in the music world and try to play like them, and eventually you get good enough where you kind of can veer off and become your own musician. And I think when it comes to non-duality, the craft itself is something that's available for everyone. And so the idea that you have to somehow copy someone's phraseology when they talk about non-duality, or try to take ancient scripts and make that something that you repeat, it can be good, because there's an element of connecting with people from all those the wisdom of ancient teachings, and portraying that, because sometimes if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So let's see, like you are what you've been looking for. I think I hear Paul Hederman using that a lot, and he's I think he's maybe borrowed some of his ideas from teachers from the past, but every teaching really applies to this moment. And the analogy of playing guitar is, a lot of people think of themselves as the guitar, the instrument. That's the thing that's playing the music. And the way to look at non-duality is, who is the person playing guitar? And essentially, there is no separation between the guitar player and the instrument, or whatever instrument you're talking about. Because without the player, there is no music. And without the instrument, there is no music. So they're connected. They're essentially one and the same. And that's kind of the truth of your essence, is there is this entity, this personality, this ego, whatever you want to call it, separate self, that exists in a sense in your own mind. You shape it. Your cognition creates this idea of who you are. But in that sense, you exist, but it's just a kind of a thought of yourself. It's not really the true essence of who you are. And ultimately, so now I lost my train of thought. it'll come back to me. Let me just sit with it a minute. Oh, see, see, that's the beauty of what is. It'll bring you the words if you're at a loss. And what I was trying to say was, a lot of music is beautiful in its errors, in its imperfection, in its sorrow, in its emotion, in its humanness. That's what we connect to as human beings is, like Counting Crows, a band, there's a lot of sadness and a lot of depth and a lot of loneliness and isolation that you can sense and feel in his voice and in his lyrics. And that's beautiful. And so the whole idea of what I'm trying to get across here is, there's nothing wrong with trying to emulate other speakers, other musicians, other people that you look up to in whatever field of work or whatever hobbies you have. That's totally fine. But that's the beauty of it. There's nothing wrong with that. And so I think sometimes people feel like, okay, I want to get into non-duality. I want to learn the truth of non-duality, but now I have to somehow be perfect. I have to not let things bother me. I have to not have emotions. I have to not have thoughts. I have to not have a body because the body doesn't exist. And that's just a bunch of words. And so you are who you are, and that's beautiful. And so you don't have to, especially with non-duality. I mean, if you want to be a good musician, you should probably learn how to play as well as someone that came before you, because, I mean, it's built upon kind of the collective unconscious, if you will, of how to make music, and that's something you want to build on. But even if you start from scratch, that's fine. And especially with non-duality, you're essentially talking about nothing, and everyone, it's for everyone. It's the great equalizer. And so you don't have to have a canned response that you've memorized. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you. And even if that's the imperfect you, that's not the all-knowing, the perfectly peaceful person, that's the beauty. You are the beauty. You are what is. And so that's the message of non-duality. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you. And you can't not be you. Because all imperfection is, all this chaos, if you will, of life is just beingness forgetting who it is and living the dream, essentially. And that's beautiful. And so that's who you are. You are just beingness here in the moment, being who you are. And so, if you can pull back and find all those walls that separate you from the essence of who you are as an individual, as a spark of consciousness, then you can really communicate to others better. You can connect with people. But if you have all these barriers in between that keep you separate, that are just illusions, essentially, then you'll stay separate from people, and whether you break down those barriers or not, that's inconsequential. But to see who you are, there is a process, if you will, of seeing through those barriers, and part of that process is accepting them and loving them. Because without that, it just becomes another barrier. So you really have to love your imperfections. That's a big part of forgiveness that is in this moment, that always is, forever, and always, and in the past, right now, in the future. So, with that being said, what I should do is write a song, a non-dual song, that's from my own voice, for what it's worth, comes from where I am in this moment. And maybe it's something that, if you have an idea for a song title, maybe I can, I don't have a lot of experience with songwriting. I've written a few songs that are probably pretty mediocre, but odds are I'm probably not going to write a song that says non-dual in the lyrics. Because I think talking about that kind of gets old. I think you gotta wallow in the pain and dig in the dirt and really dig deep as far as that goes. So yeah, that's where I'm at. If you have any ideas in that respect, let me know. Leave a comment below. Hope you enjoyed this video. Just to reiterate, if you haven't checked out the nothingcon.com, the non-duality conference, the Nothing Conference. Check that out. Otherwise, leave me a comment, like, subscribe, that whole deal. Until next time, peace.